a long time ago.
Welcome, everyone. You have picked up 4 handouts on your way in. They are not 0 of those 4 handouts are for today.
Yes. However, they are. Let's see, next Wednesday. No, Tuesday, what?
Tomorrow,
Yes,
Wednesday, not next.
there we go, yes, there we go. I don't like this, I can never keep track which day it is. All right, so I'm just gonna go over these real quick. You've got 4 things. One's a POGO. You're gonna have kind of a mini project, if you will, and there's 2 guided notes, okay? So the first thing here, this is a POGO. We've done these before. If you're wondering what the actual term is, they come out of a book that says POGO, whatever, all right? So we're looking at, prokaryotic versus eukaryotic cells. You are a eukaryote. We will find out why you are a eukaryote and what the difference is between prokaryotic and eukaryotic, okay?
EU is
That's a
pronounced.
good thing to remember though for a test. Oh, I don't remember what the difference is between prokaryotic and eukaryotic. You are eukaryote.
And
Now,
this is pronounced U. EU is pronounced U. I don't know why, but that's.
that will make more sense down the road, okay? So you've got a POGO, right? Front, back, front, back.
That's tomorrow's virtual day assignment. Okay.
Next 3 are after, correct, yeah.
So on your tomorrow's to-do list, there is this 5-minute video that we're asking you to watch as well. This 5-minute video right here. We want you to watch that first. There is no handout associated with it. There are no questions for you to answer. It's good for learning to watch that video. It's a 5-minute introduction to prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Watch the 5-minute video, then do that activity. It's good for learning.
It's done by, anybody heard of Amoeba Sisters? I know, kind of a goofy name, okay? We reference them several times in biology. They're professional, what is that? YouTubers, professional YouTubers. Everything they do is a voiceover to animation, so it's not some stuffy old guy, you know, standing at a chalkboard pointing and you know, talking in a monotonous tone, okay? They're as entertaining as, you know, something academic could be, I guess you could say, but they are really packed full of a lot of good information, and the way that they present that information really does help. So when you see, or if we mention or allude to the fact that there's gonna be an Amoeba Sisters in Canvas to watch prior to something or in conjunction with an assignment, please make sure you do. Honestly, it won't be boring and it will really make a difference in helping you understand the material, okay? So you have 2 guided notes, all right? The first one here is on cell theory. It's a front and back. That's section 1. Section 2, actually going to get into eukaryotic cell structures, okay? That leads to the final assignment, which is this packet. It's got a kind of a 3D model of a cell on it, all right? You'll notice as you turn the page, there is a plant cell, empty, void of any organelles. Your task will be, here are some of the organelles, and you've got a chart here, okay? So for example, I'll give you a freebie. Nucleus. Hey, there's the nucleus. I want to color my nucleus blue. I'm going to color this blue. I'm going to write in here, color and model nucleus blue, and I'm going to describe the function of the nucleus, which I will know from having completed my guided notes, okay? Not all of these organelles are on this piece of paper. You may have to draw some things in. Once you've colored, cut them out, and lay them in your plant cell. You can glue it, you can tape it. honestly, you're not turning the hard copy in, so if you wanted to, you could just set it on there. And then, you know, when you take your picture, just be sure you don't sneeze or breathe real heavy, or all your paper goes when you start over, okay? So it's up to you how you wanna do it. You may have to overlay one of your cutouts with another cutout. Well, not may, you will have to, okay? So pay attention, all right? Then that gets obviously submitted. That is your 4 tasks, virtual, starting tomorrow on through the weekend.
Some of your organelles, for example, is called a plasma membrane, also known as a cell membrane. There's not an image on that page 5, I think it is, so you will have to draw that structure in, okay? So not all things are listed there. But why are we giving you like Thursday and Friday's virtual day stuff now? Because this is gonna take a little bit more time than we've typically been giving you for virtual days. I'm not saying it's over our allowed amount of time. I'm not saying it's over that, because generally, I think I've officially heard that 45 minutes of virtual day homework per class is an acceptable number, but like we should try to limit it to 45 minutes of biology on average for a given day. So these are 2 virtual days, so that means we get 90 minutes of your time. I'm not saying this is gonna take 90 minutes, but a lot of these, like tomorrow's activities, probably more like the 25 to 30 minute number, okay? But these are not gonna, like this might take 15, 20, this might take 20, 25, this one might take half hour. So the combination is gonna be up there a little bit more. So if you say, hey, I wanna dedicate 45 minutes to biology tomorrow, this only takes me 25 minutes, you still get to spend 20 more minutes, and you can kind of get started on this stuff in advance. Okay, so we're trying to get that out to you a little bit earlier. Maybe the end of the week's busy for you and you wanna get a head start on some of that stuff. So we're trying to be, it worked this week because we had the stuff pretty much ready to go. I still gotta do a video recording for this. But otherwise, I'll try to get that done during my lunch. And then I can publish like pretty much the rest of the week for us here. So.
The guided notes, sections 1 and 2, on Tuesday, you're gonna have a mini test. It's a little bit bigger than a quiz, but not quite a test, okay? It will be on sections 1 and 2. So it behooves you to put some effort into your guided notes.
And not just filling in words.
Yes, and not just this time,
To
anytime you have
learn,
guided notes.
right, to learn the material, not just write down the word, hey, there's a blank here, fill in blank.
The section 2 guided notes are going to assist you greatly on that diagram in terms of identifying organelles and listing their function, okay? But as always, if you run across something and you have questions, you're not sure, this doesn't make sense, my gosh, I just don't get what the Golgi apparatus does, or holy smokes, these 3 points on the cell theory make no sense to me, reach out to us. Our assumption, if we do not hear from you, is that, hey, I have everything complete and I understand completely all of that which was presented virtually, okay? If we don't hear from you, that is what we're assuming. Hey, good, they've studied, they've completed, they don't have any questions. If there's something you don't know, you have to let us know, okay? And we'll figure out whether it's we work together in person on a Friday or after a class or during the study hall or over text or do a WebEx, all right? But if we don't hear from you, our assumption is, boom, there's no questions. Hey, I've got this, I'm ready to go, okay? Nod your head if you agree. That makes sense. Okay. At least a couple of you can nod your heads. Good. Step in the right direction.
All right, the next thing we would like for you to do is, come on. Hey, it's it. All right, is to pull out your iPad, Canvas, in-person agenda for Monday. We're a little out of order on this, but the very first thing it says, while we're taking attendance, to do this, I haven't taken attendance.
I did.
So we've already done attendance, but we want you to do this activator, okay? Answer these questions while we are taking attendance, so you can go through and we can get some feedback on how to like further kind of move forward. of guided notes, as well as we just kind of want to see what kind of misconceptions you have. Okay, so go ahead and try that. I'm sorry, not try it. Do that.
Yeah.
Do that.
There's a couple questions like that aren't necessarily content related. Be honest on it. You'll understand when you get to those. Shoot straight. You're not getting graded on this. You're not getting punished regardless of your answer. Okay. Just be honest with us anytime we ask you to fill something like this out.
Okay, if you're doing this on our video, hit pause and we'll come back later. Be like, welcome back, everyone. And so when we go through, we can kind of look at these results. Couple of things we want to kind of point out is this is now a couple of Mr. DeGrand's class, then all of our classes that we had yesterday and today. So, you know, if we look at some kind of data, pretty much most of us got, this is the grows and develop. Most of us, is that the first one or second? The first one was the knee, what's that? Tap your reflex. Tap your knee. It was a response to a stimulus is what we were looking for. The next one was grows and develop. Most of you are getting those right. This one, we recognize that these are really two different. It was a shiver, I think, when you're cold, or sweat when you're hot. So hey, that could be response to a stimulus or maintain homeostasis. This one is one we really want to spend some time talking about. If something exhibits 4 of the 7 characteristics of life, okay, then it is considered to be alive. And you can say, why 4 out of 7? Because that's over 50%, right? That was kind of a purposeful pick that we use for that. If we go through and we say, if a living organism has 4 out of these 7, does it make it living? And the answer is no. They have to have all of the thing, all 7, in order for it to be living. Okay? So 54% of people are getting that one wrong. So let this clarify. In order for something to be living, it must have all 7. Okay? All 7. Now, some people just screw that up. The next point I want to make, though, okay, is it alive? Can a single-cell organism be alive? You're pretty good with that one. Is this pie chart. And again, thank you for being honest. 34% of students have self-reported that they did not do their guided note sheet. That was due today, or last night at midnight. So of those students who answered this question wrong, 54% people answered this wrong. There are self-reporting, 35% of the students never saw that slide and didn't do their homework, so they wouldn't know that information. Okay? So the point we're trying to get to this is virtual learning days. Mr. DeGrand, he was the person sitting in that desk when you guys walked in. He counted the other day. Including today, we have 28 more in-person learning days this semester. This semester, we only see each other 28 times, including today. To me, that doesn't seem like very much. Thank you, Mr. DeGrand. I just said your name. Were your ears ringing?
Yep, all the way here.
Oh, okay. That's Mr. DeGrand, everyone. 28 days, including today. So our days are limited of in-person instruction, which guided notes is a way that we can give you information, we can teach you information, we expect you to learn information, and if you have questions, make sure you ask so we can clarify on those virtual days, because we don't have enough days to do all this stuff together this semester.
How many days are in a regular school year?
180.
$180, right? So a semester would be 90, a quarter 45. So we're over a month in, think about this, we're over a month into first semester, and we only have 28 in-person days left. Normally, on a normal school year, if things were normal, we would have 90 a semester, 45 a quarter. We've got a month in, we only have 28 days left for the entire first semester. So these days become really important when you are here, but equally important when you are not. What you're doing on your virtual days is just as important as you being here and actively participating.
So we wanted some feedback because we gave you a different option for guided notes this time. So we wanted to know if just doing Google Slides was better, or if watching a video of us explaining and walking through the slides is better. Okay, so the first question is, what do you think was best? Now, I'm assuming most of you were filling that out as what's the easiest. Like, which one is the best to do? 68% of you are saying, hey, just flipping through the slides was the best. And I'm making the assumption that you think best was easiest. And what I tried to do is clarify with a follow-up is which one do you think is best for your learning, best for you learning the material. I'm good, I just didn't read it, the full sentence. Okay, for you learning the material. And I really hope that that's how you read that question. Changed slightly, it went from 68% thought that slides were best to 61% still say that it's best for learning. Honestly, I'm a little bit of a skeptic on the data, but that's what the data suggests. You guys are telling me that you think this slides is best for learning than the video. Now, 30% said they didn't do the guided notes. And the reason I put that is because I didn't want that to maybe skew our actual, for the people who did it. But the data suggests that the video, you guys don't think the video is as helpful or valuable for learning. I'm a little surprised. I think the videos are good because we can clarify important details. I'm concerned, and let me maybe just put this statement. I'm concerned that when you do the slides that we're filling in missing words and you're not even like focusing on what the words are. And if that's the case, don't do that. Because it's not just getting homework done. The intent of this is like learning. This is us trying to teach you this material on a virtual learning day. So if you're just flipping slides looking for words to fill in the blank to get that completion, that's not gonna be helpful. So the idea is some basic feedback, a lot of kind of reoccurring. It's easy to go slide to slide to find the information. Okay, so they like the slides better. Own pace, that's a pretty common thing I've seen a lot of. I can go my own pace. You know, sometimes maybe I'm talking too fast and there's too much information and I'm flipped slides already. And let me just keep in mind or remind you that in a video, in YouTube, these are all YouTube videos that we're uploading. You can hit the gear button and you can change the playback speed too. You can speed it up. I don't necessarily suggest that, but you could. But you can also slow it down. Like my son last summer when he was doing remote learning, there was a phonics lesson that he had to work on in 2nd grade to go through and make the sounds. My daughter could do it at normal playback speed, but in order for my son, he's got the speech and language, so in order for him to make some of those sounds, took him a little longer, we would play him back at 0.7 speed, because that was beneficial for his learning of that. Same idea, if I'm going too fast on a slide, you can change the playback speed. You can slow it down. You can always hit pause, you can always rewind too, okay? So that's something to keep in mind. But that's a pretty common thing I'm seeing. It's self-paced, okay? Some people say it doesn't really matter, okay? So that's kind of the feedback that we got. So because of that, on one of the virtual day assignments that is the guided notes that we have out there on the back table, there are 2 of them. Nope, that's the wrong day. There's your Amoeba Sister video. All right, I think we're almost there. All right, so of this is not published yet. It's, I think, pretty much ready to go. I did both, okay? So figure out what's best for your learning, okay? What's best for your learning? Is it best for your learning to do the slides? Here's a link to the presentation, or it's embedded. The slides are directly there that you can go through and you can swipe forward and backwards at your own pace. If that's beneficial for learning, there it is. If you think it's beneficial for your learning,
welcome everyone to this section of guided notes.
this is video, then watch the video. We had a student stuck after class, 2nd period, and he talked about some things. And we even suggested, and again, it's time, but if it's about learning, then the time is well worth it, that maybe you do this, you fill in the guided notes, and then you watch the video afterwards to reinforce those ideas. Or you watch this, you get what you can while you're watching the video, and then you go through and you find your missing information. You gotta figure out what's best for you in these times. Our days are limited, so the intent is that you need to learn this material, not just do the material, learn the material on those days. Okay, and I'll do that, we'll try that one for a while. So this one I still have to make a recording, but we'll do both the video and the Google Slides. But do what's best for learning, not just what's easiest. That's not the time. Questions on any of that? All right, so we're going to talk briefly on these. Again, this was your learning. The intent of this is you already went through and you asked us questions if you had questions on these things, but there's a few key things that we want to make sure that you're clear on. Someone in our last class made a comment like, hey, cells, we're finally learning biology. Yes, biology is a study of life. Now, I'm not saying what we weren't doing before wasn't science, but it wasn't talking about studying of life. It was talking about scientific design and experiment, how do we draw conclusions and stuff like that. So biology means study of life.
This is where it gets fun.
Right, and there's some general themes, and some of these themes like cell theory, that's section 1, guided notes. Homeostasis is a characteristic of life that we're gonna see in just a couple slides. This is an entire unit that we'll do. We'll talk genetics a lot. Okay, so these are kind of the preview of what's to come. The cell theory consists of 3 parts. These 3 parts of the cell theory are listed in your guided notes that you will do on your virtual days. And chances are really good that some form of question about the cell theory, because this is important, is going to be on that quiz that you're going to take on Tuesday. Okay, so cells are the basic unit of life. All living cells are made up of 1 or more cells, and living cells come from other living cells. Homeostasis, body temp is the classic example of homeostasis. You got to maintain a relatively constant body temperature, and what happens if you get too hot? Your body does what? To respond to the stimuli, it does what? Sweats, which is your body's attempt to try to do what? Why do you sweat? Because you're hot. But what is it trying to do? Cool yourself, right? Cool it down.
What if you're really cold?
What's your body do? Shiver.
Why?
Right? Yeah, it tries to warm you up. So we have a pretty narrow margin of body temperature, 98.6 degrees. You go up a couple degrees, you go down a couple degrees, and bad things happen.
Yeah, it doesn't take much.
Right. What happens if you get too hot? Well, you sweat. What happens if you still doesn't cool you down? Well, you could get heat stroke, and you could die. What happens if you start to shiver, and that doesn't warm you up? Then you get hypothermia, and if that doesn't fix it, if you don't fix that, what happens? You die. Okay. You start breathing at a different rate because you maybe don't have enough oxygen, or you have too much carbon dioxide in your blood. What happens if that doesn't fix it? You die, right? So homeostasis is a pretty key thing to try to keep those margins within like that acceptable range. Did I delete a slide? Or I moved it? I think I moved it, I think. Characteristics of light, there are 7, and all 7 of them need to be there or present or have in order for it to be considered a living thing. And that's what that scavenger hunt was meant to be, is you're supposed to take a picture of something that is an example that shows the characteristic of responding to stimuli. So here's 3. Hey, a frog climbs in the Venus flytrap, it closes. It responded to the stimulus that there's food in it. Your pupil, you can kind of see it, is dilating here because of light. This leaf happens to close. Okay, that's an example of some things that they respond to stimuli. Here's a picture of like plants growing, or baby pictures to toddler, 2. Okay, that's growth and development. Okay, reproduction, we want to talk a little bit about reproduction. We're talking about an organism making the next generation of itself. Okay, there's 2 modes of reproduction. There's asexual, where only one parent is needed to make that next generation, or there's sexual reproduction, which 2 parents are needed to make the next generation. So we were using the term offspring in our second period class, and some students were like, well, like, do bacteria really have offspring? Because like a bacteria goes through asexual reproduction, a bacterial cell will split and become two. Is that an offspring? Okay, maybe not. So next generation. Okay, so that's an example. Some cells just split, and over time, this is like a bacteria colony growing and splitting over time. One becomes two, and they're genetically identical. That's one example. That plant that's on that table back there, if we cut, and that's what I was actually doing, I was getting a container. I'm gonna cut some of those things off because it's really long, and I'm gonna stick them in another pot of soil, and they'll reroot. That's another way that plant can reproduce asexually. It's one plant that we can go through and it will produce an exact copy genetically of itself. Sexual reproduction, 2 parents are needed to produce the next generation. That's a general statement. It's not necessarily a always true statement, but generally speaking, it's a true statement. There are some species that can sexually reproduce with themselves. Okay, a case in point would be a flower. A flower, when the pollen pollinates the flower, that's sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction does not require sexual intercourse. Sexual reproduction is the process of combining sex cells. Okay, for humans, it's sperm and eggs. In flowers, it's pollen to the pistil. That's the sex cells. Okay, so sexual reproduction does not mean sexual intercourse. Okay, but we get genetic variation. So a lot of times we think, oh, it's gotta be 2, not always. Homeostasis, we already talked about, have to have all 7. See, these are on order. Complex chemistry, these are kind of the 4 characteristics of classes of complex organisms or molecules, that we sometimes talk about. These 3 are foods. Protein, that's like your meat. We often think of meat, but it's also like beans is a source of protein. Lipids are your fats and your oils. Carbohydrates are your starches, your grains, your sugars, your candy bars, right? Your Snickers bar has lots of this in it. Your fruit juice, your soda, and then nucleic acid, that's our DNA and RNA. But it's all essential for us to live. Cells are the basic unit of life. All living things must be made up of cells of some sort, and that's what this unit is on, is cells. And then we got to pass genetic information from one generation to the next.
So for those of you that completed your guided notes, were there any questions? Anything you need clarification on? Or if you didn't, and we just went through the slides and you're like, whoa, that slide didn't make sense, or that point didn't make sense? Anybody got any questions? Okay.
So in order for something to be a living thing, it must have all 7 characteristics of life. It must respond to the environment, grow and develop, reproduce, maintain homeostasis, have complex chemistry, consist of cells, and pass on genetic information to offspring. Okay, it needs all 7. So right now, we're in this kind of weird time in our history called a pandemic, or we're referring to as a pandemic, that we're dealing with a virus, and the virus is coronavirus. So just to kind of clarify a few things about the coronavirus. Let me start with coronavirus is not new. The coronavirus that we're dealing with right now is a new strand of coronavirus. Mr. DeGrand, maybe I shouldn't say this, there might be HIPAA laws against this, but I think he'd probably be okay. Maybe I shouldn't say, never mind, forget that I mentioned Mr. DeGrand. Some people that I know might have had a child or a loved one, is that vague enough, that had coronavirus like last year in daycare centers or schools. It's not uncommon that coronavirus will circulate throughout a facility. The thing is, this is a different coronavirus. So the official name, according to the World Health Organization, is Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2. Also known as SARS-CoV-2. So you've heard of maybe SARS outbreaks from like in the past. SARS is not new, coronavirus is not new. This particular strand of coronavirus is a new strand. Back in March, I think the official title had the word novel in it, because it was novel, right? It was not something we had. I believe they dropped that term from it, and according to WHO, this is the official name, is SARS-CoV-2. So is SARS-CoV-2 a living thing? Does SARS-CoV-2 have all 7 characteristics of life? Or the seasonal flu, if you want? Does
Gotta
a
have all
virus,
seven.
does a virus have all 7 characteristics of life? So think about that for a moment.
This will be yes. This will be no. Okay, you got 2 options. Living, not living. What is a virus?
Okay, so thumbs up if you think it's living. Time to cast your vote. It's okay if you're wrong. I'm wrong a lot, especially at home. Okay, thumbs down if you think it's a non-living thing. Okay, thumbs up. I see thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Do I see any thumbs down this morning? I don't know if I see
No.
any thumbs up. Okay,
Okay, somebody with thumbs up.
which is all of you.
Yeah. So
One of you.
One of you 11. Why did you, or why do you say a virus is a living entity?
Pick one of these maybe and say like it. The thing that really made me think it is because it has to have all 7, right? But is there a particular thing that really stood out?
Number 7. So
Pass.
like, virus is designed to like destroy, to destroy stuff. So like, it'll create offspring and to further that's what it's designed for, is to just break down a cell.
Break down a cell and then pass that information on to the next generation, right? Yeah, I agree with that statement.
Who else?
It consists of cells,
Okay,
so
we'll come back to that one.
Just simple.
Single cell organism, okay, we'll come back to that one. Anybody else? Yeah, I'd say we'll come back to this because, well, now's the time. Now's the time. It does not consist of cells. Okay, so a virus is not a cell. Okay, a virus is a membrane wrapped around genetic information, but it doesn't carry out some of the basic functions of life. Okay, so it lacks some of this. Cells is the basic unit of life. It doesn't made of cells. It is a membrane with genetic materials, and that's really about the extent of it. It doesn't really respond. It itself doesn't respond like as a virus colony. I don't know what you'd use the term. There's changes, but that's mutations, right? The genetic information. I agree 100% that it does pass genetic information on the offspring. 100%. It hijacks a cell 100%, and it makes clones or genetic copies of it, and it passes on. That's how it infects. That's how it's designed. But it's not made of cells, therefore not a living thing. The other thing it also does, when we said reproduces, I'm going to say a virus doesn't reproduce, and you're going to say this is semantics. I'm going to say a virus doesn't reproduce, a virus replicates itself. Okay, it replicates. And what does replicate mean?
Builds.
It builds, it makes like a copy, right? And it can't actually replicate on its own. It needs a cell, it hijacks a cell to trick it into like making copies of itself.
So if here's my virus, can I reproduce this? No, but I can replicate it, right? How can I replicate this? Copy machine. Hey, my host. So I take my virus into my host. Okay, now virus isn't hitting print, but you get the idea, right? With that host, now I can replicate. That's why we're saying replicate instead of reproduce.
So viruses are not living things. They don't have all these characteristics of life. Now so viruses can make you sick, right? Okay. What about bacteria? Can bacteria make you sick?
Oh, God,
Yeah. Mr. DeBoer has maybe some personal experience. Sorry, HIPAA. Maybe. Mr. DeBoer, did I disclose that you were maybe sick with bacteria at one point in your life? I'm sorry if I broke the HIPAA rule there. Okay? Wrong. All right. So bacterial infections. Bacteria can make you sick too, right? So is bacteria a living thing?
So those 7 characteristics.
Yeah, a bacteria is a living thing. A bacteria carries out all 7 of these characteristics. Therefore, it's a living thing. It is made of a cell. It's a single cell organism that can reproduce on its own. Given the right conditions with food sourcing conditions and everything, it can reproduce on its own. So what do we do to treat a bacterial infection? Like, let's say you got strep throat, right? Yeah, that's bacteria. What's the doctor give you? What's that? What kind of medicine though?
Starts with an A.
Antibiotic, right? You take some antibiotic. Penicillin is like the classic, like, treatment, right? And what happens is it'll kill it. Can we kill a virus? Well, we can't kill a virus if it's not living. We can deactivate viruses, right? So when we go through, what can we do to deactivate a virus? Well, there's a little bit different mechanism that we have to go through and we have to do. So just to kind of, SARS-CoV-2 is the virus. The virus that we're dealing with right now, coronavirus, officially is called SARS-CoV-2. The disease that is caused by SARS-CoV-2 is called COVID-19. The virus is SARS-CoV-2, coronavirus is the virus, COVID is the sickness or the disease that we get from it. Okay, it's kind of, HIV is the virus that causes the disease of AIDS. It's that kind of idea, COVID versus coronavirus. Okay, so what do we do to deactivate a virus? How can we treat viruses?
Vaccine.
Vaccination is a great way that we can go and we can try to prevent, but it's a preventative measure for viruses. Okay, but that's preventative. What happens if you get a virus?
You create antibodies.
You personally create antibodies, and an antibody is basically this way that your body goes and says, hey, there's some foreign invader. Okay, there's something in your body that shouldn't be there, and your immune system makes these antibodies that comes and attacks those foreign invaders and destroys them. And with time, your immune system spikes, builds antibodies, then just kills, destroys, deactivates the viruses in your body, and then you get better. Same thing when you get a cold, same thing when you get seasonal flu. And we build antibodies. So that's one of the things with COVID-19. There's a COVID test. But then after you've recovered, there's something called antibodies. They can test to see if you have the antibodies, because that means like you had it, you overcame it, and you have antibodies in your system that combated it or made you get healthier, right? So your body's response is antibodies, and with time, your body can build antibodies to foreign invaders. So why vaccination? Why did I get the flu shot on Friday? Why are scientists trying to figure out a vaccination for COVID-19 or coronavirus?
To build your antibodies.
Absolutely, it builds the antibodies in advance. Okay, so I got a flu shot on Friday. This is a true story, I did get a flu shot on Friday. Okay, that flu shot, it injected a virus, a deactivated strand that's not gonna get me sick. What my body said is like, hey, foreign invaders, what is that? Antibodies, build antibodies, build antibodies. But I never had active, like, live ones to get me sick, right, to get me sick. But those antibodies are in my system. Now, the flu vaccination, they make a prediction of there's generally 3, sometimes 4. They think what 3 strands they think are gonna hit the US this flu season, and that's what they get. It's guess. It's an educated guess based upon data from around the world. But then they inject it. So if I get one of those 3, I have the antibodies in advance that should help me either not get sick or not get as sick. That's the intent of a vaccination.
Think of it like from a military analogy, okay? So, boom, antibodies, think of it as soldiers, troops, however you want, an army, right? I get the vaccine, my body builds an army. My army is trained, my army knows who the enemy is, and should the enemy appear, my army is ready to engage and destroy them, right? Versus, let's say I don't have that vaccination, I don't have the buildup of the antibodies in my body. Now, whatever virus comes in, hey, I've got invaders, my body goes, oh, crud, we have to attack. But first, my body's gonna have to recruit some soldiers, and it's gonna have to train my soldiers, and then my body will finally be able to go on the offensive. Does that make sense, like from an analogy standpoint? So is it better to have a garrison of troops trained, ready to go, should the enemy invade, or on the flip side, wing it and just see what happens and react? So that's the thought behind vaccination. Should you be exposed to something, your body is already ready to fight versus having to react after the fact.
So why do we wash our hands? Why do we hand sanitize? Why do we spray your desk down when you enter the room and when you leave the room? The intent is we're trying to deactivate any virus pieces that are on your desk when you walk in or that are on your hand. To try to, on my hand, if I have a virus on my hand, am I gonna get that virus in my body? If it's only on my hand. Our skin is pretty good at being like waterproof and germ-proof, right? It's gotta get into our body somewhere. It could be a cut, right? HIV, we talk about bloodborne pathogens, they can get through a cut. Or like eyes, nose, ears, I think ears, I don't know, mouth.
Soft tissue.
You know, right, your open connections to the outside world. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to spray, we're trying to wash, we're trying to hand sanitize to deactivate that virus, so if we did have some on, it actually will strip away the membrane and actually like break it into pieces, so if that does get in our body, it doesn't have the mechanisms in place to then hijack our cells and then replicate.
It's like diffusing a bomb.
The pieces are still there, but it's a pile of useless
Yeah,
pieces.
it can't,
that isn't
it
gonna
can't hurt you.
go
right?
boom, right? So that's the intent of the, why we do what we do. So. All right, real briefly, tomorrow, virtual day, you have the Pogo, watch the Amoeba Sisters, you got the Pogo activity. If you wanna go ahead with the guided notes, they're there. That cell project is gonna take you a little bit longer, so we're trying to get some of that out for you. Come Thursday, we're gonna work with microscopes. Okay, we're gonna do a microscope lab that you are going to go through, and we're gonna look at, as of right now, we have 4 different things under the microscope. You're gonna be looking for certain cell parts. Okay, you're gonna be looking for certain cell parts under that microscope. So we'll kind of go through and we'll be working through that on Thursday. If you have any questions, let us know, but otherwise, wipe your desk down and have a great day.
We're here for you. If you are not sure, let us know.